Hello everyone, and welcome to my Days of Our Lives official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Officer Goldman kidnapper Theresa furious over no offer. Days of Our Lives reveals that Officer Goldman got her emblem and armament back, so Rafe Hernandez was pleased over her return to active duty following the disquisition. Once Jada Hunter was alone with Rafe, she admitted she didn't know important about Officer Goldman's particular life and hoped she had someone to spend Valentine's Day with. Jada's gift for Rafe was an antique sheriff's emblem, so he loved it and gave her a cuff with a feminist quotation. Rafe and Jada had to get back to work, but they verified they were still on for a double date with Stephanie Johnson and Everett Lynch Latterly. After Rafe mentioned meeting Everett formerly through his work at The Spectator, he said Everett sounded like enough cool Joe. Jada mentioned that Herrick's husband, Bobby, was also a journalist, but he surely was cool in her eyes. In the city forecourt on Day's occasion, Stephanie snapped snaps of Salemites sharing in the geocaching event and gushed to Trip Johnson as well as Wendy Shin about all the plutocrat raised for the sanitarium. In the domain, Trip hid a box for Wendy to find and assured her that it was a ring when she sounded concerned. Wendy was pleased over the earrings Trip got her since they were the same bones. She respected at the store. Trip also liked the fancy cufflinks Wendy gave him, so they celebrated their presents and love with a kiss. Meanwhile, Officer Goldman lurked before ultimately revealed herself to Wendy and Trip. After Officer Goldman claimed Rafe had her watching over them, she said there was intel to indicate Trip and Wendy were in peril. Trip wondered if this had commodity to do with Ava Vitale and what happened to Harris Michaels, but Officer Goldman acted like Rafe would have updates latterly. Officer Goldman whisked Trip and Wendy down under the guise of taking them nearly safe, but the music and tone of the scene made it clear that she was a shady Bobby. Working for Clyde Weston, James Reed. At home on Friday's Day's occasion, Sloan Peterson Brady sounded irked as Eric Brady idolized on Jude Brady in his stroller. Eric had a teddy bear for Jude and a choker for Sloan, but she was dissatisfied when that choker had a cham with Jude's name. It was egregious that Sloan didn't like Eric making everything about the baby. Sloan gave Eric some red lingerie that she planned to wear latterly as his Valentine's gift, but he was eager to head out since Jude would be sleeping soon. After Leo Stark bugged Everett at work, he realized he'd have to fly hand in glove this Valentine's Day and wound up sharing in the scavenger quest. That put Leo in the city forecourt at the same time as Sloan and Eric, who called Leo over despite Sloan's demurs. Leo pushed Sloan's buttons as usual, but Eric told her the Joe was inoffensive. Once Eric returned home with Sloan, he planned to put Jude down for the night while Sloan slipped into the red nightie from earlier. After Sloan put it on, she was disappointed to find Eric had fallen asleep. Sloan made a phone call and said she was alone tonight, so she made plans to meet up with someone, presumably Melinda Trask, at small bar. After Stephanie called Everett and verified he'd be heading to the cantina. Soon, she joined Rafe and Jada there. Everett eventually appeared right as Jada was headed to the bathroom, which delayed their hassle a bit longer. Once Jada returned to the table, she was shocked to see the man she recalled as Herrick's husband. Jada easily allowed. Everett was Bobby, so she heaved and called him by the name she knew. Everett sounded nonplussed and weirded out by Jada's stupefied response. At Theresa Donovan and Alex Kiriaki's apartment on Friday's DOL show, he took his time getting ready as Theresa's offer expectation grew. Theresa allowed. This would be a momentous evening, and formerly she was seated at the bistro with Alex, she heeded to a night to flash back. As the night went on without Alex popping the question, Theresa sounded on edge. Alex guessed there was just one thing left to do and asked the server for the check. Theresa allowed. Alex might be reaching for the ring box in his jacket fund, but he pulled out cash rather. That led to Theresa eventually blurting out that Alex should just do it and that her answer was yes. On Friday's Day's occasion, Theresa told a thwarted Alex that she set up the engagement ring box, but he gently explained that she got this wrong. Although Alex was sorry and wanted to talk effects out, Theresa snapped about having nothing to say to Alex and made a scene before stomping off. Days of Our Lives spoilers say Alex and Theresa will have to find a way to get on the same runner time travel surprise Bobby is Everett trip, and Wendy locked up Days of Our Lives for the exercise videotape for the reveals that Jada Hunter will be floored when Everett Lynch denies that he's Herrick's husband, Bobby Stein. Indeed, after Jada shows Everett and Stephanie Johnson the engagement snap on her phone, Days say Everett will contend there must be some mistake. Although Everett wouldn't be suitable to deny the resemblance, he'll assure Jada that he's no way met her and clearly wasn't married to her. Still, Steve Johnson will get updates on all this and put his PI chops to good use. There'll be some bad news for Stephanie, since Steve will putatively prove Everett was born Bobby through his birth instrument and some other word. Days say Everett will stand his ground and supplicate Stephanie to believe he's not the lying imminence that Jada claims he is. Indeed so, Jada will suppose this is just another illustration of Bobby's typical manipulation, so she'll advise Stephanie to run. As far as Jada's concerned, she'll suppose Stephanie needs to cover herself by cutting all ties with Everett. Other Days spoilers say Officer Goldman will lock Trip Johnson and Wendy Shin up at an undisclosed position, so they'll realize she's a dirty Bobby. Over with Ava Vitale, she'll tell Ray Fernandez about the arrangement she had with Harris Michaels and how they were working together to free her from Clyde Weston's grasp. Ava will contend Trip is missing and will point the cutlet at Clyde as she tries to help Jada understand the dire situation. While that hijacking extremity is playing out, Julie Williams and Doug Williams will visit the oppressively damaged Horton house with Maggie Kyriakis. DOL's daily exercise videotape hints that a tragedy will spark a trip back in time, and Julie's voice can be heard talking about the Horton family history beginning with her grandparents. There'll be some dummy flashbacks of a youthful Alice Horton and a youthful Tom Horton on a fun and games, so we'll see the early days of a love story that would eventually change Salem ever. The show's daily promo ends on a veritably novelette-ish note as Doug sings to Julie with the burned debris each around them. Constantine's cruel Katerina vengeance orders John as the pawn to kill Marlena? Days of Our Lives spoilers and updates tease Constantine Meliunis could achieve a cruel Katerina vengeance. Now that Constantine knows he can control John Black with the Abbey Tarot card, turning him into the pawn, he could order him to kill Marlena Evans. Days of Our Lives the pawn killed Constantine Meliunis' beloved in front of his eyes. Constantine told John that the pawn killed Constantine's cherished, Katerina, right in front of his eyes, and also flashed the card in front of John's eyes. He also ordered him to put his gun to his head and pull the detector, but John was playing along to try and get further information out of him. Days of Our Lives, Constantine's cruel Katerina vengeance orders John as the pawn to kill Marlena? Still, after Constantine left, there sounded to be some kind of unconscious response in John, analogous to a post-traumatic stress complaint flashback, and John latterly told Steve Johnson, Stephen Nichols. John didn't tell Steve everything, still, and he told indeed less to Marlena when he got home, which greatly concerned her. Marlena could tell John wasn't acting like himself and may sweat his old head injury was causing DOL saving his pawn for a rainy day. Constantine decided to save his pawn for a stormy day, having other purposes for John in a reverie. Flashing that card did have some effect, but it may not be from swaying. The after good sounded to be from John's repressed recollections. He didn't know who he was for numerous times. Constantine may decide to spark the pawn to get relief of Steve, when he realized Steve's trying to get relief of him ever. Also read, DOL grief-stricken Ava prays, please let Harris live. Steve might manage to liberate himself from an ambush, because he defate the pawn being actuated. He knew John when he was being controlled by Stefano Di Mera. Days of Our Lives an eye for an eye. Katerina appeared to have been Constantine's woman. Or conceivably his fiancé, John, as Stefano's pawn, had come bringing a death trouble from Stefano. Back in the day, Stefan and Victor Kyriakis were bitter adversaries, and Victor was part of the Greek mob. That may be how Constantine really knew him. Constantine may be conniving to use John, reactivated as the pawn, only he'd be controlling him now rather of Stefano, that's why he's calling him his pawn. The bitterest vengeance, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth type vengeance, would be for Constantine to order John to kill Marlena. Constantine would be watching from nearly so he could order John out of his reverie, to see what he'd done, writing him of course about killing his true love.